Hey there, welcome to week 40. I can't believe we're at 40. It's like, where did this time go? And this week's Fable is Royal Purple Brick. And the card is Faith. So I'm working with the Chakra Wisdom Oracle Toolkit, and the official title is A 52-Week Journey of Self-Discovery with the Lost Fables. And I think that is the biggest thing about this work, is that it really is about self-discovery. And when we're willing to go into ourselves, into our internal wisdom, that's where we find our answers. And one of the great things about this fable, and I know you're going to read it, but I feel it's a key to the fable and to our conversation today, is the idea that sometimes in life we hold a brick in front of our face and we scream that we're blocked by a wall. And in this fable, the idea is that everybody's saying, put the brick back in your path, so that character needs to put the brick back and keep walking, because we pick these things up because we're frightening ourselves. And, I had someone say to me once, I was teaching, and she said, it was a manifesting class. And she said, well, how come we don't manifest instantly if it's also magical? And I said, well, can you imagine if you thought of a donkey and it appeared? And she went, oh, yeah. I said, we already call stuff weird when we create it, rather than just go, oh, of course, So can you imagine if something you thought of, we'd be Samantha from Bewitched, be a whole different, this would be a different conversation. So the idea this week, and the key word is faith. And the idea is, I am more than I think I am. And I think that we undervalue ourselves a lot in this incarnation. Remember, we're on the sixth chakra, sixth sense. And what is that third week? That third week is our thinking and how we process things, the planning we're doing. Remember that this is going to be about family issues. And when we look at the faith card, this is the only card in the deck, by the way, where we meet the angel of inner peace, or the great servant of inner peace. And what's interesting about this is that it's the only one where he appears, and yet there is not much that was actually delivered to me about the great spirit of inner peace. But he does speak in this fable. And so I know I mentioned, I think it was last week, let me make sure. Excuse me, guys. Yeah, last week was also one of the 17 cards of destiny in the Chakra Wisdom Oracle, the deck. But this workbook is really about working through the fables. And one of the miraculous things that I really love about this deck and this whole process is that the more we know ourselves, the more we can just read the cards as an extension of ourselves. It's not something that's coming to us, it's something that's coming through us. And I know that when we look at the message of the week, a million pairs of glasses, and I had to find the pink one. So, okay, forgive me for the pink today. All right. So one of the things that I talk a lot about in other work is the idea of a trance, and how we go into a trance state. And a trance state can be anything. It can be shopping, it can be eating, because when we're in that state of shopping, there's a focus. When we're in that state of eating, we're in that state. But there's also a trance of a limiting belief. And it becomes a habit that can then become locked in muscle memory. And I talk about it here, but as I say that to you, the tendency to pick up the brick and put it in front of us and go, I'm blocked, is more of a reflex than something that's really happening to us. And so part of this for me is really about, when is it that it's a reflex, and when am I really kind of stuck, if you will? And when I'm stuck, I have to go into my center, go into my sixth chakra, and say, I don't know what I don't know. And the beauty of this fable is it really reminds us that not knowing isn't necessarily a stopping place. It's a place where you kind of say, well, I don't know. I don't know what to do next. And do that next intended thing. Like, well, I don't know how to create a website. Okay, well, maybe I'll read on how to do it, or maybe I'll go do my dishes. See, sometimes it's really about going into that acceptance and having that faith, if you will. and just saying, I don't know how to do this, and I'll do it later. And I'll go do something else. Because one of the things that we forget is that we give an assignment to our brain. Our brain and our intuition, if you will, are different, right? So our brain goes, I've got to figure this out. And our intuition goes, oh, I'll go out and source it. And our intuition is just constantly expanding our range of spiritual and intuitive knowledge. Whereas our brain's going, I don't know, I have a brick. See? So the intuition here begins to work in the sense that we think, I don't know what to do. And then we know that our intuition can handle it. And I just say, okay, this is how I do it. You can do it in your own way, obviously. But I just say, okay, God, I don't know what to do here. Make it a billboard so I don't miss it. And please show me what the next intended thing is. And in my part, I plan to be diligent and aware. So I will keep my eyes open for that next intended thing. And then I just keep asking that same question. How do I get this done? A couple of years ago, I was working, and I don't know if I've told the story, so forgive me, but a couple of years I was working with a web guy. And, web people, when I work with them, when they're brilliant, they're very like, okay, this is how it's done. And I said, well, I want the website to do this to this. It needs to go from here to here. He said, it can't be done. I said, well, no, but this part needs to connect with this part. How does it happen? He said, it just can't be done, Tori. It's not possible. And I thought about it, and I realized I was talking to him in his brick mode, right? So I had to energetically allow him to put his brick back down. And then I had to find the languaging that he was going to understand. And I said, well, if it was possible, how would it be done? And he said, but it's just not. I said, I understand, but if it was, what would you do? And he said, well, I'd need to code a plugin for this to work with this. And I go, okay. And he looked at me and I said, I need you to code a plugin for me that will create this and this. And he went, that's possible. So one of the things that this faith card reminds us of is that sometimes we're just not asking the right questions, not because we're stupid or not because it can't be done, but because we don't know how to get it done, and we actually don't know the language of the land. So part of this for me, and when I look at this, is looking at the way we're thinking, and is our thinking really in sixth chakra? That's our intuitive energy. That's our psychic ability. That's our hidden agreements. Are we like really trusting our own intuition? And if we're not, say, I'm not trusting my intuition. I want to go wild. I want to go crazy. And because my energy is such upset today, I'm going to go walk my dog. And, it will come. It just will not come in that exact moment that you want it to appear. So that's really what I feel this card is about in many ways, because the great spirits appear in this card and they just keep saying, put the brick back in the path. And you'll understand why when you read it. Now, this week we look at how we can physically manifest things in our lives to help us heal the wounds of our ancestry. Royal Purple Brick reminds us that we often cling to what we resist. So, when we talk about people resisting something, they're actually clinging to it and they can't let go of it. And therefore they get stuck in resistance, because that's why we say what you resist persists. But when you recognize that, oh, I'm in resistance right now, it's about going, okay, I can't resist because that energy is exhausting and it drains me. So I'm just going to sit back and I'm going to recognize that I am in upset about something. And so when we look at the idea that how we relate to the issue is the issue. So if I'm relating to resistance as I'm going to hold my ground, I'm always going to hold my ground, and I'm never going to create a breakthrough. I'm never going to move past holding that brick, because in a sense, that's what resistance is. It's you're holding the brick and saying, no, I know it can't be done. And as long as you know it can't be done, it won't get done. And so we go back to that programmer who I said, okay, but if it could be, what would it be? And he said this. And I said, okay, so I want you to do this. And he was able to laugh and go, okay, I get it. Yeah, I can do that. And he said, I don't know how yet. I said, brilliant. I know you'll figure it out, because that's what he did. And of course, he figured it out. So I had the plugin I needed, and that's how I actually created the card shuffler, the original card shuffler, but it's now on chakrawisdomtarot.com. So the actual idea of it came from me asking questions of somebody who said it couldn't be done, but asking it in the right way that they could then see the possibility. So we can only see the possibility when our intuition is open to asking those right questions. So let's take a look at the tip. The belief in a block is what keeps it in place. This week, keep in mind that the blocks in your life may no longer exist. What about that? Sometimes too much spiritual talk can keep you from actually living. If you've created physical ailments, you may need professional help to clear them while you work on your body's memory of that block. And this is where I really want to validate people who have any kind of, I want to say conditioned physical or cognitive like I do. If you have any kind of issue, I don't want to minimize it. And I don't want to say, well, you created that. We know that it was created for a purpose, but I do not believe that it was created to hurt you or damage you or ruin your life. I do believe that these things are created to spiritually elevate us and spiritually elevate those around us. And if we don't do that, if we stay in the problem of it, that's where it becomes anger and frustration, sadness and sickness. And it's okay. See, the thing is that we create this so that we can heal something. So I've talked about this before, but the idea of if you want to learn patience in your life, you know, you're going to get long lines so that you can learn how to be zen on that line and not worry about it, or a long queue if you want. But that's what will happen because you're actually looking for something as an outcome. So one of the things I had to say was, you know, when I discovered that I had ADHD, was to say, okay, what is it about this that I know will empower me to do things that help others? Because that's the only reason I feel that I get stuff like this. And I got it. And I realized there are tons and tons and tons of people who are on the other side, who are working with ADHD people or married to them, and they're going crazy. And I do think there's a need for people to understand what this is more and more. So you can begin to see, as I say that to you, how, oh, you know, it's not that I don't feel sad sometimes, or it's not that I don't feel that, it's that I can also see that I created it to stay with my purpose, which is to support people in finding inner peace. So you can begin to see how your purpose aligns with any ailments or issues that you're having. And that's, of course, that's my life purpose divination course, but that's a whole different animal, but it's the journey we're on. See, that is the journey. So when we look at the idea of the physical memory locked in, a lot of times we lock it and we don't want to look at it, but the key is not thrown away. It's not. It will open when for me, when it got bad enough, when I recognized that it got bad enough. So you know, the first impression on this fable, I think, is important. Remember that there is always a benefit to resisting. I already said that. And there is a sense of avoiding responsibility, which, you know, and this is, I'm just reading as I'm thinking, you know, this is the thing, is that we don't want to let go, because you see, if we let go, then we energetically, we think, our brain says, no, if you let go, you're going to let them off the hook and they're going to blame you. And your brain's job is to look good. So when you think about this, you're like, oh yeah, that makes sense. So one of the things, as I'm talking today, I want you to really think about, what is it that you need to not just let go of, but who do you need to let off the hook, and what's the price for it? So for me, when I let my mother off the hook, the price was that I couldn't wear the badge of, you know, abused as an alcoholic child anymore. And that was a lot of my identity. That was who I was, you know. But when I took that and said, okay, I'm letting her off the hook, I still had that resentment come up of, all of a sudden it was like, well, you know, and she wasn't alive, but it's almost like energetically, if I let her off the hook, then what happened to me didn't really happen. And so I was upset about that. And I thought, well, I'm going to have to validate that, because if I hold her responsible, I'll never have a life. And that's where it started to unravel. And there is challenges in there. So I do, you know, I was going through it alone. And I don't really think that everybody should. If you start to unravel things and it's becoming too much and you feel a resistance, please seek some outside help, because I do feel that getting a good therapist or someone who you can speak to, a counselor of some kind, is very helpful when you're unraveling some of these ideas. Let me see. Remember that as long as we place the issue outside of us, it's never going to really be worked through. And that's okay too. You know, if you don't take it in, you don't have to work it out. But if you keep it, if you maintain it at a place, it's kind of like having your little wine cellar and keeping everything at a certain temperature. Well, the minute you pull the plug, all of that's going to be destroyed. So remember, there is a loss when you unhook or unplug from an issue that you've kept alive. So I want to look at, okay, here's what I want. So I'm going to look at the group exercise this week. I really wanted to highlight that. And you know, you can keep doing this year after year and look at different things. I love the idea of working with a group, because the group activity here is really kind of cool. It's on Thursday on page 137 of Make a Connection. And if you're using the app, the Kindle, it's a different page. So let's see. Okay. So this is where it's really cool in a group setting. In this exercise, everyone takes turns admitting what they're unwilling to let go of that stops them going where they want to go. Then issues get traded, right? And so each group member talks about someone else's issue as if it's their own, but they're not giving advice. They're imagining the steps they're going to have to take to put this thing that they're unwilling to do down and move past it. Now, that's important because this takes a lot of maturity to do, because you're not saying to that person, if I say, you know, I don't want to let go of my mother, you know, my mother's issues because she was abusive. The other person isn't going to say, well, you need to let go of this and here's what I would do. It's more, I really don't want to let go of my mother's issues because she was abusive. And for me, it's because of blah, blah, blah. You know, it's because it was really painful. But if I was going to do it, here's how I would do it. And it's not giving the other person advice. It would be, if it were me, how would I do it? And so it's a really powerful exercise, because remember, we don't all have the same issues. So someone else may look at it and go, what do you mean you can't get on a skateboard? You know, I'm a skateboard champion, you know, and it's like, so what's easy to one person may be a life's challenge to someone else. And I think that's the key with the faith card. And it's remembering that you have everything you need to create that breakthrough and to see, third eye, to see the vision of how your thinking is running your life. And I really encourage you again to do all of the exercises this week. If you do it, comment below that you went through the week. I want to know how many of you really go through the week. Some of you may not comment at all, and nobody may comment, I don't know. But and I think the other thing is look at the questions that are posed in this and look at which one you want to answer. For example, the Tuesday color reflection says, what does royal purple say to you? So just answer that question. Do something that keeps you active with this work, because that's how you keep it alive. Even if you're doing something and avoiding the rest, it's totally okay. Just do one little step, and those little teeny steps are going to move you forward. So again, this is week 40. And remember, this week, what's going to be coming up is the idea of faith, and really trusting that empty space between the notes, that there is sound in there, even if you don't hear it. And I will see you next week in week 41. Please remember, read the Fable. And that's the key. Talk to you then.